7:30 on this Monday morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM. It's Owen and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to be talking about that penalty shootout at the Aviva Stadium. We're going to be getting stuck into the fact that Manchester City are basically Premier League champions at this point, and it was a weekend of sunshine around the championship as well. So we've got plenty of GAA coming your way between now and 10 o'clock. If there's anything you want to get off your chest, you can tweet us at Off The Ball. Anything you want myself and Ger to get stuck into. Ger, how are you?
Very well, Owen. Very well. What's the crack?
What piqued your interest over the course of the weekend?
Well, Munster were very, 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 very good, but just not quite good enough. It's one of those things that they're going to have a lot of regrets for. It's definitely right there in the pantheon of moral victories that Munster used to have in European games. And I don't know, they are up against the World Rugby Player of the Year and Entimac and the defending champions who are getting good, and they've put them to the absolute pin of their collar, and they've had 2 kicks to win it. Granted, they're like moonshots, but I don't know how they recover emotionally from that. Like, maybe it's good that that's the end of the Van Graan era and they can look forward now with this to build on, and it's a completely different backroom team who are coming in to be different voices. And obviously Roundtree isn't a different voice, but Mike Prendergast will be, and Leamy will be, and whoever else they add in will be like able to come in and speak objectively about that game, because I suspect it will be very difficult for the team to speak objectively about it, just from oh my God, look how close we were. And if Omani hadn't got injured, if some of the penalties had gone over, if the drop goal had gone over, a lot of ifs, ands and buts, but ultimately they're out.
A little bit of FOMO on Saturday, not going to lie, watching the game in Cork as opposed to not being in the Aviva Stadium watching it. This was the sporting event of the weekend. This was like one of these really unique moments, not quite on the level of Leinster against Munster in Croke Park, obviously, but something that will carry with it that uniqueness down through the years, you'd imagine, because, whether it's people who are saying, yeah, I paid €10 for a ticket in the year 2022, we got bus for free up to Dublin, the place was just a sea of red. There was this amazing rendition of all the different songs throughout the 100 odd minutes plus. Like, I think it'll just go down as just one of these great Irish sporting events.
Yeah, and it has also denied us another one.
Yeah.
Because the semi-final would have been amazing. I think if Munster had gone into that semi-final fresh off a victory over Toulouse, they would have gone in with some confidence, knowing full well what they know intimately about the Leinster team that they would be facing. So, and look, I think we have been very critical on this show and on all of our platforms of the Munster hierarchy over the recent seasons. They obviously did this really well. They managed that whole situation brilliantly. From the moment they knew that the game wasn't going to be in Thomond because of the Ed Sheeran concerts, which I was like, I think there was massive outcry about that, but it was all nonsense because Munster have a debt they need to service. This is just a strange concatenation of events because of COVID and because of the different tournament. Like, this is going to happen at some stage when you own a massive stadium and you need to pay it back. So once that happened, they put in plan in place to make the Aviva a fortress, and it was genuinely a fortress. And stuff like that really, really matters in the long run, that you're able to get your crowd, you're able to mobilise them. And, I can't imagine those scenes are going to hurt when you're making calls to try and convince other coaches to join that backroom team and other players to join the team.
Yeah, and I'd imagine Damien de Allende is looking around thinking to himself, God, I wish I had another season of this. Like, was it Brian O'Driscoll who had the figure last week, or was it somebody had the figure anyway about de Allende and the amount of times he's actually played in front of a home crowd at Thomond, and it's in single digits, and that's going to be something. And I'm just picking him because he's one of the most high-profile signings they've made, and he's obviously in the departure lounge in the off-season this year. Like, there is a sense that there is a bit of missing out on his side of things. But on the flip side, as you say, trying to attract new talent to come to the province, if that's what they want to do, then they're not going to shirk at the possibility of those sort of days, because it'll be just like that in a packed out Thomond next season, or potentially at the end of this season. And I know it may not be at Thomond, but they may be, looking at a situation where it could be a URC final against a certain other Irish province. I know they have to play Leinster in the regular season before things wrap up, but there is this kind of feeling that there might be momentum building. It could be just a one-off, as you say. The next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting.
Who knows what they can take from that? Do they take it and think, right, well, that's our brilliant performance for the year out of the way, or are they like, look, we can do that next week as well? There's no reason why we can't do that again over the course of the season. I mean, you'd like to think from Irish rugby's perspective, it would be brilliant if Leinster could win in Europe and Munster could win the domestic competition. That would be kind of the ideal scenario, where that rivalry, where Leinster lose a game and it's not the European one, that they get their 5th star, and that Munster feel like they're going into next year much closer to Leinster than we had thought previously. Now, here's the thing, that might just have been a one-off performance. That might just have been one of those backs to the wall, incredible emotional things, and they're actually miles away from Leinster still. We don't know, because that's the way rugby works, really.
Leinster in the first half as well, a couple of hours later, probably show that they're absolutely the standard bearer in this. I personally wouldn't mind to see a Leinster-Ronan O'Gara match-up in the final in this thing as well, which is a live possibility at this point. We are going to come back to Munster very shortly. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it, in particular the penalty shootout. Was it a good way to settle a game? Did you enjoy it? Was it the right level of tension? Was Roman Ntamack celebrating like he thought he'd won the shootout a little bit prematurely? Actually the best moment on Saturday? I think it was. We'll be getting back into that in the amber in our performance rankings in just a little while. It is 7:35. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. It's time for the Gillette performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Every week we're giving away a Gillette Labs shaving kit. To be in with a chance of winning, just let us know who you think should make the performance rankings. Best place to enter is the Off the Ball Instagram page, and you'll see the comments box in our story. Let's run you through what we're looking at this morning. We're going to look at the Liverpool-Manchester United bias, GAA scheduling, both in the red, that rugby shootout in the amber. I think it's stone cold green personally, but we'll get to that in a moment. Kerry's depth in the green, and the Limerick hurlers forever in green, it seems. Any stopping them over the course of the next little while will be one of the questions we ponder this week and this morning. We'll start off there at the bottom, which is Liverpool-Manchester United bias. It is a bad weekend, and was a bad weekend for the duopoly of bias at near the upper echelons of the Premier League. Pep Guardiola was one of the people who really tried to hammer home this idea of bias on beIN Sport yesterday after Manchester City had hammered Newcastle United. He kind of threw this in there after a brilliant win for his team, a win that moved him into a pretty comfortable position, I think it's fair to say, in the race for the Premier League title. He said, everybody in this country, the media and everyone, supports Liverpool, of course, because Liverpool has an incredible history behind them in European competition, not in the Premier League because they have won one in 30 years, but it's not a problem at all. The situation is what it is. Not happy whatsoever about, I guess, the certain comfort that people feel in seeing Liverpool do well. And he feels that Manchester City winning the Premier League title, as they've come so close to doing now as a result of yesterday, is something that's going to be, that doesn't sit well with a lot of people out there. It kind of echoes what Sergio Aguero said recently. He said in England, all the journalists, everybody, all the TV channels, they're all Manchester United supporters. Everybody. And I guess, you know, they're not wrong in terms of what they say. There's obviously a massive fan base for both of these clubs, and it's quite interesting that this mask sometimes slips with Pep Guardiola a little bit, this idea that he is kind of the outsider, that his Manchester City team kind of still feel a little bit like the outsiders in all of this, as if they're upsetting the apple cart somewhat when they go and win trophies.
Yeah, it's interesting that Pep feels this way, given that he came through the Barcelona system and had his greatest period of success at Barcelona when he had the best team in the world, and then went to Bayern Munich, who are the only team in Germany when it comes to TV coverage and globalization. And okay, so obviously Dortmund have occasionally registered little blips, little tiny little blips on the seismograph. Is that what it is? Whatever it is. This is weird. I think this is a weird paranoia that Pep has, but I think it probably speaks to the fact that they know that they're there because of the money that is coming from the Gulf. And like, it's not about tradition. It's not something that they had this incredible crop of youngsters come through, despite having the greatest academy that we've ever heard of. The last decade, we've been hearing again and again and again how great their academy is. It's the best in the world. And you know, maybe there are a couple of other players. That bench was obviously full of kids the other night, and you know, you again raise questions about the building of the squad. But what's he trying to say here? We can't get no love for the €1 billion that we spent and the financial fair play regulations that we managed to bend but not break, according to how the a court case ended up, but the rest of the world thinks we did break them. Like, is he aware of the fact that everybody thinks they've just bought the success? Is that what's going on?
Like, I wonder, is that CV, Pep Guardiola's CV, actually the reason why he feels like this, that he is used to being, you know, part of the establishment, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, the sort of the establishment when it comes to Spanish football or German football, and Manchester City is, to a certain extent, anti-establishment at this point, that Liverpool and Manchester United, and to a lesser extent Arsenal, will be very much seen as the establishment of English football. I wonder, is that actually sort of just his muscle memory speaking here when he comes out with things like this?
I mean, it's accurate, right? The vast majority of historic global fans and the biggest supported clubs in England are Liverpool and Manchester United, because they were, I mean, you couldn't say that Manchester United are the most supported because they were the most successful. When Manchester United were going through their drought, they were still massively supported. Like, and I think a lot of it probably goes back to the response that the club had to the Munich air disaster and how that just won people over for generations to come. Like, they have black in their kit as part of that. And I think, you know, that made a lot of people feel emotionally bound to them. And likewise, like, Liverpool have risen from a city that has been forgotten politically and socially and economically for a long period of time, and managed to build brilliant football teams. And they were football teams that were built like on relative shoestrings or through the academy. And it's just different from going around the world and buying the best players and saying, you know, we deserve to be treated the same way as everybody else, when it's actually not the same thing. Like, you can't buy tradition. It's the one thing that all of Manchester City's money can't buy. Now, in 50 years' time, if they've won 37 out of the next 50 leagues and 25 out of the next 50 Champions Leagues, then they'll be one of the most supported clubs in the world. But, like, will people care? I don't know. I won't.
Give it 50 years, maybe there'll be like some inkling of that stony heart of yours that'll change, and you'll wake up to the warmth that Manchester City are bringing to all of our lives. We'll see. Like, I mean, let's not make any predictions on that front just yet. Like, we put Liverpool, Manchester United bias in red because it was a bad weekend for Liverpool and for Manchester United. What's interesting, I think, from if we're like sticking with sour enough manager comments, if you look at that Liverpool-Tottenham game, like, Tottenham, especially under Antonio Conte, have had a pretty good record of taking on the big two and getting points off them. I mean, they've got like two draws against Liverpool, they got 2 wins against Manchester City. I know Conte wasn't there for all of those games, but Klopp, as we've seen so many times in the past, doesn't take these sort of situations very well whatsoever. It's part of what makes him a great manager, and it's, I guess, a symptom of being a very, very successful manager, is that when you're not successful within 90 minutes or you don't get a win that you feel like you deserve to get, you're probably not going to be overly happy with it. And afterwards he said, I'm sorry, I'm the wrong person for that, when he was asked about Tottenham. I don't like this kind of football, but that's my personal problem. I think they're world class and I think they should do more for the game. I think they had 38% possession, but it's my problem. I cannot coach it, so that's why I cannot do it. So yes, world class players, block all the balls, really difficult. Atletico Madrid is doing it. Fine, they won, whatever, fine, absolutely fine. I just can't. I respect everything they do, but it's not me.
I respect everything they do, but delete everything before the word but.
This is like, I mean, the Atletico dig, is that still March 2020 speaking there, when we all thought Klopp was just being a little bit grumpy because, you know, COVID was about to engulf our entire world for a little while, but actually it's this taste he has in his mouth when his plan just gets swallowed up a little bit by a Simeone or Conte. Like, for me, two absolutely fantastic managers, and like, I mean, if you want to like compare ahead of Thursday night to the two North London approaches to Liverpool this season, Liverpool beat Arsenal 6-0 and they managed to, what, a 2-2 draw and a 1-1 draw against Tottenham both times. Like, I think you'd pretty much, you know which manager is pretty is happier with their outcomes against Liverpool, and it's going to be Conte versus Arteta. Whereas I'd say Klopp probably has a lot of nicer things to say about Arteta than Conte. So I think if Klopp is complaining about you, you're doing something very, very right, actually.
And so Spurs should do absolutely everything they possibly can to keep Conte. I really think going back to Pochettino, if that's their consolation prize this summer, is the wrong course of action for them and for the club. I think it's going to make a big difference to them in the future. Like, there's a possibility that Antonio Conte is their version of Klopp, and he might be that transformative figure that the club really needs to become title contenders, pardon me, and or European contenders in the long run.
Yeah. The other side of things then, I mean, this is just, like, was it last week you were saying that we'd gone maybe 10 consecutive weeks in the performance rankings with Manchester United in the red? Did we get a break last week? What happened last week? I can't remember, but something strange and awful must have happened for us to, like, not have Manchester United in the red last week, but they are back with a bang, I think it's fair to say. And is this, like, is this the lowest of the low? Have we asked this question multiple times, and have we always come to the conclusion that yes, this is the lowest of the low, and this is very much the case again this morning, because like they are now going to end up with no, sorry,
this isn't
go ahead.
Certainly, I've never come to the conclusion this is the lowest of the low, because it can always get worse.
No, but I mean to this point, I mean it's always been the lowest of the low. It's still on a downward curve.
Yeah, so that's not the lowest of the low. That's like, this is a staging post to the bottom.
Yeah,
okay. This is the slippery slope.
The lowest so far.
We could be mid-slide.
Its lowest point so far, right?
It's a new low.
A new low. Okay, I can settle for that.
Is it a new low?
It is officially now going to be their worst ever return points wise for a Premier League season in the Premier League.
They got relegated.
I know, but football only started in 1992. Football is only a 30-year-old sport. Let's not forget.
Okay, but they have been so. No, it is not a new low. And actually, like I asked the question on our Friday morning show: which United will finish higher up the table next season, Manchester or Newcastle? And Colin Buick told me that it was a joke. I was doing it to troll and to be insulting. I am not doing it to be a troll or to be insulting. I legitimately think there's a chance that Newcastle will finish ahead of Manchester United next season. How quickly can Erik ten Hag turn this around? Like, look at the playing stock that he has. He's going to be working with McTominay and Telles and Shaw. Like, is he actually going to be able to turn these players into players who can compete against Spurs and Wolves? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know.
Like, I mean, I think that is a very different question to can they compete with Sean Longstaff and Joe Linton. And I like Joe Linton is a very, very good player and is better than maybe some of those Manchester United players you've mentioned there, potentially. And I think he's probably
what if Ten Hag doesn't hit the ground running? What if he's 18 months before he gets things going properly? Can you see them being beaten 4-0 by mid-table team? So anybody from West Ham to Leicester to Villa next season, any of those teams could beat mediocre on their day at Old Trafford, maybe. But that's the new low.
Yeah. Like, is the situation here, and like if you want to look at it in a very simplified way, that on Monday night, Rangnick stumbled upon, I guess, what he thought was his best formation, some version that was close to maybe his best team, and as a result they got one of their better performances of the season, and was like, that worked, therefore let's do it again, without realising that Brentford are a different team to Brighton and Hove Albion, and these are two very different challenges, and you can't just set up the same way in back-to-back games and hope for the same outcome, especially when you come up against a good team and an excellent manager in Graham Potter. Is that not just a simplification of it? Like, I granted, it's too simple, but is that not like a huge part of what happened leading into the weekend? And is Erik ten Hag just not a far superior manager to Ralph Rangnick?
Yes, well, look, I think anybody at this stage is going to look superior to Rangnick because of how badly he seems to have managed the situation, how he has been incapable of improving any of the players, how nobody looks better than when he arrived. And, the reports from the training ground, you can see it made manifest on the playing pitch. Like, it's been a disaster. He has been a disaster as a manager. And so that, I think, is the thing that will give Manchester United fans some hope. But what if Ten Hag's not the man? What if Ten Hag finds this job to be too big? What if he was made perfect for Dutch football and it's not a shoe-in that he's going to be successful. It's not a guarantee. More than likely he will be, right? He has an excellent CV. He's not young. He knows football very well at this stage. He has plenty of experience. And so he definitely has what you would say is the right CV. However, the people who picked Ten Hag are the people who picked Ralph Rangnick. Can't forget that.
And that's the problem here. And that's the framework of a club that is going to be making or have a big hand in the signings this summer, compared to maybe the framework that we're going to see at Newcastle United, which always looks like that. I mean, like that. By the way, I'm arguing the point here that Manchester United are going to finish ahead of Newcastle United. This is not like a big leap for me to be trying to rush to the defence on that point. I do think you're getting ahead of yourself just a little bit on that. Like, I thought the question on Friday was who's going to win a Premier League title first.
No. Who's going to? I mean, no.
Like,
who will compete first for a title from these two clubs next?
yeah.
I can see that being Newcastle as well. But I think Newcastle are going to finish ahead of Man United next season.
Interesting.
Well, let's wait and see how the summer goes, right? I mean, can Ten Hag make 10 signings in the summer?
Like he's probably needs to sell 10 players, and as a result of that, maybe he'll be allowed to sign 10 players. But they would need to have a good bit of that lined up already. You'd have to say. And like one of my favourite statistics actually was Jack Pitt-Brooke in The Athletic, who said that Manchester United will finish at least 20 points behind the 81-point standard that Jose Mourinho set in 2017-18. So they're 20 points worse off than Jose's Manchester United peak, which wasn't much of a peak at all.
Yeah, with Jose Mourinho as a real manager, Ralph Rangnick was a glorified scout. Like, this is King Ralph territory, where the entire royal family gets electrocuted and John Goodman ends up as the king. It's the premise for a movie that I've never seen, but was the one on every video trailer that we had in the 80s. And like, that's what happened. Ralph Rangnick was King Ralph.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, we thought that we were kind of like free, or this story was free from us and everybody really, but it just gets more and more interesting. It absolutely is another staging post towards the bottom. 4-0 to Brighton surely will be close to the nadir. Like, I'm not saying it is.
No. I mean, they could be relegation candidates next year. We don't know. Like, they could be.
Surely not.
What's stopping them?
Money.
The form at the moment is so bad.
With the wage bill dictates where you should finish in the table, and Manchester United are a massive outlier in terms of their wage bill versus
constant outliers. Always the exception to the rule when it comes to this. Look,
Ten
Hag can revolutionise this, right? Yeah. He can have them fit. He can have them physically ready. He can have them tactically and technically prepared for games, and that would be a quantum leap forward. Sure, okay, but you're telling me that Harry Maguire and Scott McTominay are the backbone of a team that is going to finish in the top 6 next season? I'm not sure. I mean, Bruno might be, but where's Bruno's form gone?
Yeah. Is Bruno even the best Bruno in this Manchester United, Newcastle United kind of head-to-head that you're talking about here is probably the next debate that we're going to have in this show. A couple of texts in. Comco Productions is not happy with our performance rankings list. Limerick at the top is a joke, they say. They were outplayed by a tip team missing 10 players from last year. How about Manchester City or Verstappen? Fair points. All performance rankings in disarray, I think it's fair to say. I'm going to just blame the performance rankings on you, Ger, because I'm kind of leading the show this morning. It's usually the other person who picks them, even though I may or may not have picked them. Just tweet at Ger Gilroy for any complaints you may have. Limerick at the top, a joke. He says, Kenny the Dad says, Pep wants to be loved, but he went to Bayern after they won the Champions League. He left, they won it again. He hasn't won it at City despite spending vast amounts of money. And then Kenny the Dad also says, Klopp, when he arrived at Liverpool, said he wanted to bring back enjoyment. He says people work all week to be entertained on a Saturday. He has never changed in his attitude, which is fair enough. And I mean, that explains his own style of play, which is very effective as well as being very enjoyable to watch. But I would say that a lot of Tottenham fans would take winning football and getting them back into the top 4 ahead of... I think that would be the ultimate end goal, to get their enjoyment, really, at this moment. But it is out of their hands, as we know. And then, most importantly, Dave Cos has been in touch to say, OK, we need to get the names of the books behind Ger. Any Greek philosophers?
No Greek philosophers. I can't really look around. That's too wanky. But they are real. I can confirm that they're real as opposed to...
fake. As opposed to fake?
Yeah. I didn't... We moved house recently and I didn't organise them. But
what are you going to do? Is it by alphabetical order? Is it colour coding? What is the organisation?
These are all by author. Okay. I'd recommend this to anybody who hasn't... It's an animated story of the Holocaust.
What's it called?
Very mouse.
Okay, very good. Check it out for all of our radio listeners. GAA scheduling is the next thing in our performance rankings this morning. So, GAA scheduling, yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure about you, Ger. I'm not sure how much of this you saw over the course of the weekend, but we were having this kind of conversation on Friday. I was accused of being elitist towards Leitrim, I think, by Adrian on Friday, which was an interesting enough argument. That this kind of build-up and this sort of early section of the championship, particularly in football, has just been a little bit underwhelming. I guess we knew that the schedule was a bit light at the weekend, but it kind of feels like this is a common theme that's going to pop up again and again and again. And like, I mean, I think we need to get over the fact that we're having the championship early in the year and the fact that it is going to overlap with other sports. But I do think maybe the GAA and the schedule could be a little bit better to get the best out of themselves, to at least give them the best opportunity to compete with the other sports. And one of those ways may be to actually have the schedule on a week-to-week basis just a little bit better than it is. And I think we're running into a little bit of a scheduling cock-up this weekend. Like, these things could change, I'm sure, but it does look like the fixture list this weekend. Saturday at 7 o'clock, you're going to have Dublin against Kilkenny in the hurling. And then on Sunday, you've got a raft of fixtures. You've got Waterford against Cork and Clare against Limerick. That's a 2 o'clock game and a 4 o'clock game. But essentially at the same time, you've got the Leinster semi-finals taking place in Croke Park. And at 4 o'clock as well, you've got Monaghan against Derry. Like, all those games, especially Monaghan against Derry, are games that you want to watch, and it's clashing with the hurling. Granted, you'll be able to watch it on the BBC, and one will be on RTE, I suspect. But I just think maybe looking at that schedule, is there a better constellation of fixtures there where you could say, let's move a couple of these to the Saturday afternoon, to maybe the 5 o'clock on the Saturday, Monaghan against Derry.
3 o'clock?
Or Saturday at 3 o'clock. It feels like there could be like 2 windows there that could be used a little bit better. Like even Limerick...
3, 5 and 7?
Yeah, I think so. And like Limerick against Tipping the football is at least going to be a contest. That's Saturday at 7 o'clock. I'd watch that if that was on at 5 o'clock. What you have is Laois Galway and hurling at 5 o'clock and Westmeath against Wexford at 6:30. We will have the under-20 football final. But it feels like the conversation we were having 2 weeks ago about the double header of Munster hurling games. Sorry, it was a Leinster game and a Munster game at the hurling 2 Sundays ago, clashing with Tyrone Derry, which was a brilliant football game. It feels like we're sleepwalking into that situation once again this weekend, as if there isn't this overarching controller to say, listen, this is one organisation and there are a lot of other sports on at the moment that are available to people and that will just distract people from watching GAA at the moment. Should we be doing this a little bit better and move the fixtures around to ensure that we give ourselves the best opportunity to get exposure?
Okay, so let's say the answer to that is yes, right? And let's say everybody agrees that the answer to that is yes. How would you fix this weekend coming, for example?
Well, as you say, the 3 o'clock and the 5 o'clock situation on Saturday, I'd fill those with better games. So Monaghan against Derry, I'd move that to the 5 o'clock game on Saturday, and then I would take one of those Leinster Championship games and move them to the 3 o'clock on the Saturday. And yes, not Croke Park. Fair enough if you want to put the Dubs in Croke Park and you're allied to that post-COVID that you need to get the Dubs playing in Croke Park, and Dublin Meath has to be on Saturday in Croke Park. Like,
but it doesn't. We know it doesn't.
Put the under-20 final as a curtain raiser in Croke Park on Sunday, and then move Kildare Westmeath out of there. Play that in Tullamore on Saturday at 3 o'clock, and all of a sudden then you've got like a.
Could that be the curtain raiser? Could that be the curtain raiser to the Kildare game? So you'd actually end up with a big crowd.
Yes, sorry, that would make no sense to separate the Kildare people from one another. I just totally forgot that Kildare were in that game. That's exactly what you would do. You put Kildare as the 5 o'clock game on Saturday with the under-20s as your 3 o'clock curtain raiser at the same venue, and then 3 o'clock Monaghan Derry. Like that would be a better situation to the one we have. Like we are nitpicking here. We are going to be able to see the highlights of these games, but we're not going to be able to see the full availability of these games, it seems, because of the way it's set up. And like, it kind of feels like we're approaching this point, or we're at this point right now, especially looking at the Galway-Leitrim result yesterday, where it's like, okay, limber up for the annual conversation around how the provincial championships are crap. You know, this deja vu moment of, let's have this conversation again. But we're actually not going to do that. And I think that the provincial championships have arrived at this point where it's got worse than before, and the provincial championships are being treated with the worst possible thing that any sporting organisation could be treated with, which is just pure apathy. I don't think there's even any appetite out there right now to have the provincial championships a broken conversation.
Well, I think that's probably what a large cohort of people want. They want us not to care enough about this to talk about it, because we are distracted by the other sports. We were distracted by the Munster penalty shootout. We were distracted by the title race in the Premier League. We're going to be distracted by the Champions League final. And by that stage, the provincial championships will be over, and then everything will get good again. The first round of the qualifiers is going to be excellent, because you have Division 2 and Division 1 teams up against each other, and then the All-Ireland quarterfinals, semi-finals and final are going to be absolutely sensational this year, because you have teams of a similar standard trying to play attacking football. Largely ignored will be how crap the provincial championships have been. Now, in fairness, Cavan played well against Donegal. They made a game of it. Limerick made a game of it against Clare to the point where it went to penalties and they go through, and that's a lower division team against a higher division team. But the superpowers have still been annihilating other teams. Like, when you think about it, Kildare should not be able to beat Louth by that much, considering Kildare have just been relegated to Division 2 and now they've just been promoted to Division 2. So the league isn't still anywhere near as strong as it could be for helping teams to get better. And we're going back to the same conversation. The provincial structures are broken, and I think what your fixtures cock up, as you referred to it this weekend, is serving to do is to highlight that. Like, we're not going to be watching the best games. Maybe they want that. I don't know, maybe they want people to go to matches instead of watching games on TV. Maybe that's not by accident.
Yeah, it's hard to know. But like, it just kind of feels that there is this resignation that, oh, the Champions League has been great, the Champions Cup has been great, the hurling is great, football can't possibly compete with it, and let's just wait till June. That kind of feels like the mood around it. Like, can we not hope for a little bit better? And like, I know that we tried for a little bit better last year when Proposal B went to Congress and got beaten down because these provincial championships are so important. But the reason why we don't have a better provincial championship, the reason why we don't have a better championship right now is because that Galway versus Leitrim fixture yesterday was prioritised. And that's what the GAA decided last year. And it just kind of feels like, what's the point? Like, if that's the sort of level of priorities that we're seeing in the organisation, then it's very, very hard to hope for a better situation next year when you will still have these clashes and when Gaelic football will still be probably beaten to a pulp by the other better sporting competitions that are happening.
Yeah. I mean, we just need to keep talking about it and reminding people that we had the opportunity and we get the opportunity back again in the future.
The opportunity has been taken, and next year we'll have a shiny new championship, won't we, where the provincial championship is still front and centre. I don't know, it's interesting, and like, it's like this weekend, I suspect on Sunday afternoon people will be like, oh, what's going on here? Why are we not why is Monaghan Derry not in a window of its own, and why is it clashing with the hurling once again? But I guess we will probably have the same conversation next week. So those are the Reds in the performance rankings this morning. In the grandest, the penalty shootout, because apparently this was not something that everybody loved. People thought it wasn't the best way to settle a game. Maybe the format maybe didn't go down well with too many people. I thought it was great. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I thought, like, the novelty of it probably is the fuel for feeling that way, to be honest, because we haven't seen this. We've seen it once before in the competition. It's such a rarity in the sport. I really enjoyed it. I think Munster fans really wouldn't have enjoyed it for the whole point of it being unbelievably tense. But like, to be in that unbelievably tense position, I think, is just a credit to what the format is. I thought it was excellent.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Would you not have preferred, like, sudden death, five kickers and then sudden death, and have ultimately seen a prop waddle up trying to kick it over from the 22? That would have been better.
That would have been funner, but like, would that not have happened had it not been 6-6?
But there was three kickers nominated. I don't know what happens after the three kickers. Like, so I think this is the rugby Billy Big Balls getting in their own way again. Oh, I'm so smart, I can fix the penalty shootout for you. Like, well, you can't really, mate. You've actually made it confusing to the point where people in the ground didn't know what the rules were, because, as you say, like, if it had been, there are penalties from the 22 and everybody has to take one, and it's like, your goal, my goal, your goal, my goal, your goal, my goal. I think we would have got to the point where the original one that we got to when, was it Martin Williams missed one for Cardiff? That's my memory of that. And I think that would be the type of thing that would be important to try and get back to, where there's that sense of jeopardy, as opposed to, like, Munster had their three best kickers on the field at the end, and it was all set up for them to win. I don't know. It just, when you have to explain what the penalty shootout is, it feels like it's one step too much. So I can see why it's in amber.
Yeah. Like, I guess you're explaining something that doesn't happen very often. Like, it's happened once before, so you're naturally going to have to explain it. Like, I mean, I do, like, to be honest, I didn't know what the format was going to be. The thing I was looking forward to most was seeing prop forwards being forced into taking a kick. But that wasn't going to happen. And I thought the way it materialised was pretty cool. And I think, as I said earlier on, Entomac premature celebrations were pretty funny. And like, that's a moment that I'll take with me out of Saturday as a great, great moment.
He knew he was going to win that stage. I think the moment had passed.
Edward Freeman's been in touch to say Owen showing his Kerry bias. What about the smaller counties? Wexford had a 6-day turnaround before playing Dublin, who got a 6-week run in. Louth also made to play 2 games in 2 weeks, while Kildare had a wait. But yeah, like, could he not have just played those Leinster games the weekend just gone, when we had like a very, very light weekend of action, instead of playing them the previous weekend when there was loads of stuff happening? So instead of
they're
like,
going to play again next weekend.
yeah, but then you push that back a little while. Like, we're ages away from the provincial finals. Like, the provincial finals aren't until the end of this month, at the same weekend as the Champions League final, the Champions Cup final. Like, it feels that there are other ways to put. I don't know, maybe not. I haven't dug deep into the week on, week off nature of all of this, but I'm not.
I don't think players mind playing 2 games in successive weeks. That's what you're going to have to do in the qualifiers. Really, they're going to be training those days anyway. Like, you know, and loads of teams have used regular games as a stepping stone to get better. So, like, I don't think that's your Kerry bias. Your Kerry bias shows through in loads of other ways, Owen.
Speaking of, we move on to the green, and like, is it Kerry bias to put Kerry in the green? I'm not sure. Like, is
if they don't win the All Ireland from here, it's disappointing.
What do you mean? Go ahead and give us your hot take.
Number 1 in the power rankings, despite the fact that Cork set a whole campaign in motion to try and throw them off course, and despite the fact that David Clifford was, by his own standards, quiet for about half an hour at the weekend, they still won by 10 or 12 points, right? The game was completely over and done, and yet that was like the best performance that Cork could possibly have put out there. And the bench was absolutely stacked. Their bench was Dublin-esque, like, and I mean peak Dublin. There was like All-Ireland winners, All-Stars, Footballer of the Year contenders on the bench coming in as the cavalry, and the first team was playing well. Their backroom team is a Harlem Globetrotters of who's who of coaching and psychology and tactical and technical. Like, it's not never, but it's definitely now. This is Kerry's time. If they blow it from here, they've blown it.
Like, it's interesting.
They're so far ahead. They're actually so far ahead of everybody else at the moment.
It's interesting. You could say like a lot of the same things about Dublin last week, especially about like the All-Stars coming off the bench. But like, Kerry depth is the thing we're putting into the green here. I don't think Kerry, in an overall sense, are in the green, and that's not kind of like downplaying Kerry's chances. I think anybody who watched that game on Saturday will know that Kerry were not at their best, and maybe that maybe hammers home your point even more, that they won by 12 points without being close to their best. Like, I mean, David Clifford probably should have come away with 1-4, despite the fact that he was marked out of the game and Cork had an excellent game plan for him. Like, the reality is that on Saturday there were teams at very different stages of their physical development, and this has been something that's been levelled at the Cork hurlers as well over the last little while, that strength and conditioning wise they're just not at the level of Limerick, for example. It really feels like Cork are a level below Kerry in that department as well. In football, like, you see the forwards that they had at the weekend, especially Sherlock and Carl O'Mahony. I think they scored 9 points between them. Absolutely outstanding scores they scored between them, and you'd hope that standard of player will be brought forward by Cork over the next little while, given everything that they can possibly given in terms of SNC, in terms of their preparation, so that they can contend with Kerry, especially in 2 years' time when they bring Kerry back to Cork again, and to try and beat them on that occasion. But for me, there was still a gulf, and that allowed the Kerry depth to show, especially after 50 minutes, when you bring Moran on, and you bring Gainey on, and you bring Paul Murphy on, actual All-Ireland winners, and that completely transforms the game. And I do think that's a really, really positive thing for Kerry, is that they have proven now that they do have a squad that can win the All-Ireland. But I don't think, like what you say there, is that, like, of course it'll be disappointment if they don't win the All-Ireland. That the same goes for Dublin if they don't win the All-Ireland, and for Mayo and Tyrone. Any team who doesn't win the All-Ireland will be disappointed. But yes, they are favourites. Yes, they are the best team in the country. But I don't think they've moved ahead of the pack after the weekend.
They're miles ahead. They're very, very, very far ahead. When you consider that, like, the Dublin defence, like, we're suddenly saying, oh, they've got a defensive structure because Wexford scored 4 points against them. Like, Wexford are a mediocre Division 4 team. They're not a good Division 4 team. They're a mediocre Division 4 team. And we're like, because they put it up to them last year, we can't overrate the performance. So we're going off what we've seen from Dublin. They have no defensive structure just yet. They don't know exactly what their style of play is going to be. Sure, Brian Fenton looked like he was back to Football of the Year territory, but he was kicking free scores from the 40. Like, it was their A versus B match will be more difficult for the Dubs, right? That was actually local rivals away from home. tight venue. Kerry blasted through the Cork Challenge.
They didn't blast through the Cork Challenge.
12 points.
They didn't blast through the Cork Challenge for any. Like, that is just not a correct analysis of how the game went.
They won by 12 points.
They got a stranglehold in the game after 50 minutes when, as I say, two physically separate specimens, like the Kerry team and the Cork team, just really showed the difference. No, not at all.
They blew them up.
With all due respect,
annihilated them.
With all due respect, I would listen to Jim McGuinness's analysis over the blasted through analysis, and Jim McGuinness pointed out that Kerry in the first half did still show some of the concerning elements that popped up against Tyrone last year, which is that their attack can come unstuck against the correct defensive plan. Defensively, in the defensive system, I agree with you. Kerry seem to have got really, they've got nailed on this year. They didn't concede a goal chance again at the weekend. And Cork didn't look like coming close to creating a goal chance. It'll be interesting to see how that goes against a better team. But I think coming up against a stacked defence that have a good plan to stop Clifford and to stop their attack, like Kerry sometimes struggle with it.
Clifford hadn't got injured last year against Tyrone, they would have won. This whole notion that they came unstuck. Tyrone do have a defensive structure. Tyrone did have a defensive plan in place, and still David Clifford was like meteorically, stratospherically brilliant in that game. So I think that like Kerry are now in my book, Kerry are 4 to 5 point favourites against everybody who they play from this point forward. And if they lose those games, then it's not just a disappointment if they didn't win the All Ireland. It's like they've blown it. That's how good they are. Their team is so far ahead of everybody else this year at the moment.
I don't think they'll be 4 to 5 point favourites if they're in that semi-final against Dublin. It's Munster against Leinster. Dublin will be at home. I think that's more 1 to 2 point favourites for Kerry, not 4 to 5. Okay. But other than that, it's 4 to 5 against everybody else. The one, like I do by and large agree with your point. Like they're definitely
Hammer Mayo.
Favourites.
They beat Galway with 5 or 6 points. They beat Armagh, Donegal. They beat Donegal. So Monaghan always gives them a game. I think Monaghan might get to 3 points. But they're going to beat all those teams.
Well, what would be interesting is that there will be a 12-week gap between Kerry's two Croke Park appearances, 12 weeks from the league final to an All-Ireland quarter-final. And in that period, they will have played Cork and one of Limerick or Tipperary. There is absolutely a chance that Kerry go into that All-Ireland quarter-final undercooked, and there is an opportunity for one of those teams to come through the back door and cause them serious problems. I still think they win, but to cause them serious problems.
Tyrone are going to cause them serious problems?
Well, Derry or Monaghan are going to be in there as well. And that, for me, is you could make an argument that actually is the team that will cause them the most problems, whoever it is from Derry or Monaghan. Granted, we were just predicting draws here and we don't know how things will go. So for me, that's a slight concern. But they're in the green. The depth really showed at the weekend. Do those people who came off the bench start the next day? I'm not actually sure they do. I think that the team is so strong now that they are in a Dublin-esque position when it comes to depth. And all is rosy in the garden. We're not playing down any chances this morning. Last things for this morning is Limerick. They're always in the green. I mean, a strong argument to be made that they shouldn't be anywhere near the green this morning, Ger. What do you think?
I think very surprised that Tipperary were ahead at half-time. Very surprised that Tipperary, as good as they were, and then not that surprised in the way that Limerick managed to get a stranglehold in the game in literally the last 5 minutes. I guess that's the sign of the great team. Like, we're never going to talk about this game again, I think, when it comes to writing the story of this great Limerick team. It has become routine for them to beat Tipperary, even though that was the best that Tipperary could have hoped for. Now, as somebody earlier there was 10 Tipperary players missing or whatever it is, like a huge amount absolutely gone, and still Limerick left them in the game. But I think there's just a touch of complacency about this Limerick team sometimes, and that's fine because they're good enough to always jolt themselves out of it. And that's why I don't think we're ever going to remember this, because when the season is over, we're not going to look back at this as any kind of turning point. I think Tipper gone, and I think that's it's going to be interesting when we get to. I do think that the Munster final is actually a bit of a distraction, and the break and play in previous years has been difficult for teams to just get back straight into All-Ireland semi-final action for. So let's wait and see. But I don't think this has any bearing on anything other than that was a job they needed to do, and they did it ruthlessly in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, it definitely seemed that way, and to have just the ability to turn it on kind of out of nowhere, it seems. I do think that the one legacy point from this is just if Tipperary get their house in order over the course of the next year, and come into 2023 with a bit more strength. You're kind of looking back at this year's game and last year's game as a little bit of hashtag narrative going into the Limerick tip thing. Beyond that, I'm not necessarily sure. Limerick Clare should be a good one this weekend, and hopefully Limerick kind of play their full hand, and it's going to be a bit of a cracker. That is this week's performance rankings. Limerick, Kerry in the green. By the way, before we wrap up, just to tell you, you can come join the Football Pod live with Paddy Andrews, James Donoghue and special guests. We are going to Royal Theatre Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd in celebration of Mayo football, a look at the championship race and much more. That's the Football Pod live in Castlebar on June the 2nd. Tickets are on sale now. You can go to otbsports.com/events to get yours today, and stay tuned to OTB for details on more shows still to come.